In the previous programme, I introduced two historians, Alan Wilson and Baron Blackett, who have been researching ancient British history since 1976. They have published 9 books, and their discoveries include the genealogy of 2 King Arthurs, a dynasty of 80 British kings. They also claim to have located the resting place of the Ark of the Covenant, the Holy Cross, and other buried treasures. I outlined what could have been a serious attempt to murder Baron Blackett, in an attempt to derail their groundbreaking research. In future shows, I will be presenting their actual historical research which backs up their incredible claims. However, attempts to discredit and smear these 2 researchers go back to the early 1980s. I have decided to document these smear campaigns in this programme, and also the corruption they have endured in the next programme, before moving on to their actual findings in the 4th programme. In the early 1980s, Wilson and Blackett were living in Cardiff, and after publishing their first 3 books about Arthurian history, became aware of letters being posted out by historian Geoffrey Ashe. Just tell us about Geoffrey Ashe. Where does he come into this?
Well, certainly in 85, we...
1985.
1985, yeah, it can't be 2000. We went up to London, and there was a lady who was friendly with a man named Victor Brand, who was a publicist. And so we went up to meet Victor Brand. And he showed us letters that were circulars, that Geoffrey Ashe was spreading around London to newspapers, publicists, publishers, anybody, and they were calling us to pieces. We would set back research by decades.
Right. So I think you'd at this point you'd had about three or four books published. Three books published.
Aye.
So he's writing all over the place.
He's desperate. He's published 8 books, and he says the same thing in all 8, but he words it differently.
He locates King Arthur Grey burial site at Glastonbury. Is that
That's right?
But you dispute that. You believe it's, or you've proved that it's in.
Well, the evidence. I mean, I'm making a statement short here, but we've got it in the books. The evidence that he's in South Wales is mountainous. Glastonbury Abbey was founded in 941, and Arthur II even dies in 579. There's too much of a gap. There's nothing at Glastonbury, and they've never found anything earlier.
So what was this Geoffrey Ashe, whose theories were different to yours?
All he had was he's in Somerset and he's in Glastonbury.
So he's writing to different publishers, trying to discourage them from publishing.
Oh yeah, and to anybody who he thought might give us publicity.
Right, and do you think that had any effect?
Yes, I think it would have had an effect. Yeah.
Right.
I don't know how much, but that's subjective. I don't know. We ran into opposition because obviously we were saying things that were taught in the schools up until 1922, 24, but the universities were saying something totally different. So we weren't popular.
I just want to take you back, Baron, to the early 1980s, where you were living in Cardiff. You were arrested for a burglary which had taken place some months earlier. So all of the things that were alleged to have been stolen, that were framed on you. Just briefly tell us about that incident.
What happened was, it was a birthday party in April 84.
And just to put this into context, I think you'd published maybe 3 of your King Arthur books, is that?
The King Arthur, King of Glamorgan and Gwent had been published. Arthur and the Charters of the Kings had been published. And we were in the process of bringing out the Arthur the War King.
Right. Okay, so carry on.
I was only a very young lad at the time, a bit naive, And we went along. There was between 60 and 70 people there. It was quite busy. I didn't expect such a outcome. A lot of beer, bottles of wine, drinks over the evening had been drunk. music, rock music, pop music was played, there was dancing. Anyway, at the end of the night, the people used to leave and the crowd thinned. And I thought to my brother, let's lose this crowd, let's get the hell out of here. Because I was getting a bit fed up with the noise and the din myself.
So you were with your older brother,
My older brother Michael, yes.
and was he living with you and Alan at that time in Cardiff?
Well, I wasn't actually living with Alan. There were separate flats. It was a
Right.
big 4-story house with separate flats.
Yeah.
I had my upstairs flat, and Alan was downstairs. And my brother was visiting.
Right.
And I put him up. He was actually residing in my flat
Okay.
at the time. Anyway, to get the central core of the situation, what happened was we left the party and we were virtually dwindling, being young at the time. I obviously drank too much.
Right.
Well, at least that. And then we left the party anyway. And we left the party, and this was in Llandaff, Cardiff. Column Road, I think it was a Column Road. I've got the precise details. As we walked towards Canton High Street.
They were walking home, and it was about 10:15, as this is what I'm told. 3 police cars drove up, one in front, one behind, and one alongside them. They're blocked off and they're arrested. They're accused of robbing somebody a quarter of an hour earlier. A gold ring, a gold chain, and £340, none of which they had on them.
Police cars were pulled up. We were arrested. So what the hell is going on here? This is my brother making our way back. We're actually going to go to a taxi rank in Canton to get a taxi back to Roath Park, where we live. What is this? We were arrested for burglary, of stealing 3 gold rings, gold jewellery, miscellaneous jewellery, and several, I don't know the exact amount now, several £100 in cash. Burglary.
Right.
And at the time, if Barham wanted to, he could have signed a cheque for 25,000. So you know he could rob anybody.
And I was taken to the police station. We were charged. Next day in the South Wales.
So you were held in the cells for that night.
I was held in the
then
cells.
You were bailed, presumably.
I was bailed out the next morning. My solicitor, Mary Williams, was astonished by it all.
Neither of them said anything, wisely. Next morning, headlines in the paper, King Arthur researchers arrested. They hadn't mentioned King Arthur. And they thought I'd been arrested with him, but actually it was him and his brother. Now, this thing was then going for trial. Obviously, it was getting us a lot of bad publicity, very bad publicity. And he and I were in the town centre one evening. It was quite a nice evening, in an area called the Hayes, where used to be an ancient market. A fellow passing by overtook us, and he had with big black shiny boots on, very dark trousers and a blue shirt and a sports jacket. He's obviously an off-duty policeman on his way home.
Yes.
This large man said to us, "Hey, you'd better get down the overflow courts tomorrow, and quick." And he walked off. So we walked into the Duke of Wellington pub, and I said to the landlord, there's only about a dozen in the bar, "Do you mind if I ask a question?" He said, gently, he said, "Go ahead." I said, "Can anybody tell me what the hell the overflow courts are?" And he said, no. And one fellow said, "Yeah, well, I know what they are." He said, "They've built a little court building down in the old industrial estate that they built during the war. They built all sorts of little industrial estates out of literally corrugated shacks, and that, for war production." He said, "You go down Penarth Road, as you hit the river, there's an old estate on your left." He says, not much for an entry, you pass it easily, but when you go in, there's all these old buildings, derelict now. He said they built a Crown Court down there. So they go, "Hey, I didn't know that. Nobody knew that. Hey, whoa, when is this?" Next morning, 8 o'clock, we're in the car, we're down there, you see. There's the entrance to the old estate. We drive in the windy road, get up. There's that lovely, small Crown Court building.
Yeah.
I live in Cardiff all my life. I didn't know it was there. Nobody did.
Right.
The fellow in the bar said that's where they put cases, but they don't want any publicity.
Right. Okay.
Because the other 8 Crown Courts are up in the city centre. There was a case on. And 2 guys were on trial for a number of thefts. We spoke to the defending solicitor, and they were on trial for stealing the gold ring, the gold chain, and the £340 from this same person. Only they'd stolen it 3 months earlier. And they'd been arrested and the loot recovered within 24 hours. And all these items were then locked in the police safe in the Canton police station. So it's obvious that the police are duplicating it's a phantom crime. You get it?
Two men were arrested for the identical crime. The courts, which are basically kept clandestine from the mainstream courts, in other words, courts that they don't want any publicity shed upon, it was the overflow courts. They call them the overflow courts, and that was on the outside of, just on the outskirts of Cardiff.
It was thrown out of court eventually.
We went there before Judge Rutter, Judge John Rutter, incidentally, and the jury were called in, 12 members of the jury, and there was 6 police officers against us. It was really me and my brother at the time. And I explained the situation. The judge was thought it was a farcical, described it as farcical. The jury went into deliberation, and the whole thing was kicked out of court.
Right, but they got the story in the newspaper to smear you, though.
Oh yeah,
Even though you were completely
there was
innocent.
bedlam in the court. You know, we were called. Bannon was called in and asked, "Are you accused of a crime or what is it?" and so on. They recalled the other guy and said, "Have you been robbed twice?" And he said, "No." And there was bedlam. But they still proceeded with the trial against my colleague and his brother.
Yeah.
Knowing it's a phantom case.
And there was various other things occurred at that time. Is that when you had your car stolen on the morning when you were going to go to the court?
I went out, I was going to check the car. Went up front, the car's gone. Now I had a bicycle, one of these motorbike chains on the steering wheel and a crook lock. And you couldn't move that steering wheel 1 inch either way. The car wasn't there. So I just phoned up for a taxi and we got a taxi. You see, if you get there, if you've been late getting there, right? If we had gone out late to look, well, where's the car? And it'd be maybe 9:30, you'd have a job getting a taxi. And then you drive to court. If you're not there on dot at 10 o'clock, an arrest warrant, bench warrant goes out.
A bench warrant.
Yeah,
So if basically if you're late for your own trial,
That's right.
you get arrested.
That's right. So
And your car had been stolen that night before.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
You know,
So-
some coincidence.
Yeah.
They don't miss a trick.
Right. So, but then you found it. You put a team together and started searching the streets.
I said, well, you knew people through Cardiff and their relatives. I said, can you search your streets in your area? And I got about 20 people doing a bit of the city, and it turned up. But it was wrecked, absolutely wrecked. But it had been vandalised, totally wrecked. But the point is that the trial then was held in the city centre, and they altered the date 5 times to get it. And there was no other court sitting hearing any other trial that day.
Right.
So they got maximum publicity on the first day when they're put on trial. When the case collapses in a heap, not a word in the press,
Yeah.
not one word.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
In 1846, they had what the Welsh called the treachery of the Blue Books. And a parliamentary commission came and did the usual parliamentary thing, went back with a pack of lies, as it were, written in the Blue Book. And the English government sacked every school teacher in Wales. Now, you've got to realise all the Welsh population spoke Welsh and about 10% also spoke some English. And they replaced every school teacher in Wales with an Englishman.
Who couldn't speak
Who
Welsh?
couldn't speak Welsh. So you had English teachers who couldn't speak Welsh in every school and a class of kids who couldn't speak English.
So it's sort of cultural genocide, really, isn't it?
Correct, the perfect term, cultural genocide. They've been at it for years.
In 1986, you wrote a smaller book, which was more concise, the Artorius Rex, which was Artorius Rex Discovered.
Yeah.
And tell us about your association with Clayton Jones, because he wanted to invest. He saw the value in your work, and he was prepared to invest money to try and get your work promoted and make it into tourist attraction, that kind of thing for Wales. So, just tell us about
what
that.
happened was a bit of a fiasco. I mean, the tourist board were denying that there was any truth in it. It was all rubbish.
That King Arthur didn't exist.
A fellow named Urquhart, so I think
This
he
is
was
the,
with
Alan, this is the Welsh tourist board.
Yeah, that's right. Welsh tourist board. Urquhart, I think he was with the Mail, one of the London papers. He rang me up and he said, look, he said, are you aware the tourist board is shooting you in the foot? Like, you know, So I rang them up and I said my name was Hetherington, which is not, obviously, and I was working for the Express or something. And could I speak to somebody? And I spoke to their tourist manager. It was a Mrs. Jones, you see, publicly. Oh, it's a load of rubbish, she said, absolute rubbish.
This is someone working for the Daily Mail?
Working for the tourist board.
Oh, sorry, working for the tourist board.
So I'm bringing the tourist board, claiming to be a reporter.
Right.
Oh, it's a load of rubbish, says this lady. Oh,
What, the King Arthur stuff
nothing
is?
in it.
Right.
I said, well, what do you make of the books? They've written the 3 books. She said, books? I didn't know there were any books.
Right.
And that was the state of the art down there. They didn't know there were any books.
Right.
So we were then at loggerheads with the tourist board. Now, Clayton wants us to do something in '86. So we formed a little company, he and his wife, myself and Barnby, the directors. He owned about 50 coaches that he ran bus services in the tops of the valleys. He had a taxi company and he also owned a travel agency. So he's ideally
He's an
placed.
entrepreneur, basically.
Entrepreneur, and a good one. And so we now are going to get this going on proper footing. And we're going to exhibit what we're doing at the travel agency or the tourist exhibition, it's annual, at Olympia in London. He applied for a grant which is available to anybody in Wales for brochures, funding for brochures, right? He was told, yes, you can have the funding, but on no account must you mention the name King Arthur, and on no account must you mention the name of Wilson or Blackett.
Right.
No, this is
So
this
he
is
was
true.
applying for funding from the tourist board,
Yeah.
and he wanted to promote your work,
He's
but
not
the
allowed to
tourist
mention
board
it.
wouldn't allow you to mention King Arthur.
Well, yeah, so he got around
Right.
it. We got
Okay.
around it. Now, the
Okay.
drill was you packed up all your literature and bundles and that, you had it printed, delivered it to the tourist board.
So
They-
I'll just interrupt you there, Alan, because you were wanting to create tourist attractions in Wales so people could come to the
That's
site
right.
where you believe Arthur was
That's
laid
right.
to rest.
That's right.
And you had it all, like a typical sort of tourist attraction
Oh,
where
yeah,
you might
yeah.
pay a fee to go
Oh, yeah,
in
we
or
did.
having
Yeah,
see
we
the
did.
whole thing.
Yeah, we did.
You wanted it, and you actually set that up as well,
Yes.
which
we
was King Arthur's cave.
Well, the cave where he was buried in the cave. Later, then, when they got the things ready, they took him out of the cave, put him in the church, you see.
Right,
or
which
near
you
the
which
church.
you at some point bought. You
We had
bought
bought the church.
Right.
Church of Wales had let it go derelict, didn't want it. We said, you sell it to us? They said, yes. We said, okay, we'll buy it.
Right.
Of course, it's the oldest church in Europe. It's built in the year sort of 50 AD.
50 AD.
Right.
Right.
We bought it.
But they didn't know. They didn't know that when you bought it off them.
Well, that's not for me to tell them, was it? You know? They didn't want it.
Yeah. So, okay. So you are you.
In May 2012, Richard D. Hall will be speaking throughout the UK and Ireland. Ticket and venue details can be found on the richplanet.net website.